I was asked to come here and talk about hypertension or high blood pressure, which, raise your hand if you have high blood pressure. I got medicine. You got medicine? Well, or if you take medicine for high blood pressure.
Warning.
That's about everybody. Some people take their medicine, some people don't. So.
Ignore me.
But, I'd say most people in America have high blood pressure or are gonna have it, and if you don't, you're real lucky. Because I had, both my parents had high blood pressure, and so I started taking medicine about 30 or 32. So, I don't like taking pills as much as anybody, but it's kind of important. And hypertension means different things to different people. It used to be back in the day, it was defined differently. And it's probably only in the last 60, 70 years we started really saying, well, this is not a good thing if your blood pressure stays up. And if it used to be when I was coming through, it was like, well, 160 over 100 is pretty high. And I've heard before that it was like your age plus 100 was high for the top number. So, that's, you start thinking if you're 80 years old and your pressure's 180, that'd be okay back then. Well, guess what? You're much more likely to have a stroke. And so now it's kind of settled down as, really depends on what you read, what's normal blood pressure. The lowest I've seen it's maybe 120 over 80. And maybe for some folks that's normal. Most of it, I kind of treat folks like 130 over 80 is pretty normal blood pressure. You get a little older, we may let it drift up a little bit these days, but it's kind of like, the reason it's so important, the higher it goes, the more risk you are for high blood pressure and stroke. And if you don't have high blood pressure, somebody's had it. Or if you haven't had a heart attack or a stroke, somebody in your family's had one. I mean, it's just, you can't escape it in our country these days. So, like I said, I try to treat folks, I'd say maybe 130, 140 on your average. And it depends so much where you check it. I mean, I don't know if you folks check your blood pressure if you have it regularly, but it helps to check it at home when you're sitting for 10 minutes at least. I mean, I'll have folks come in and they'll walk in from the lobby and they'll check their pressure and it looks terrible. And they'll sit down for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or some people wait on the doctor longer than that, and it'll be 30 or 40 points lower. So it really is important to be sitting. It's meant to be checked sitting with your upper arm with a cuff that fits the right size, and and sitting for 5 or 10 minutes. And that if it's not like that, it's not really accurate. So people get worried about their pressure being high at home. Well, how'd you check it? Well, I came out of the yard doing yard work, or right after I had a big bag of chips or something, or my legs were crossed, or they just don't check it. But it's real important, I think, to get an accurate reading. That helps me a lot. I mean, I'll have people that say they have this thing called white coat hypertension. I don't know. I mean, I don't wear white coats much, but I guess it's just people get excited, and I probably do too. And it just goes up in certain situations if you're not used to being in a certain place, or if you've been active, or depending on what you've eaten. So it's really important, I think, to check it when you're in a normal setting the right way. And so if you don't have a meter, I'm sure there's places to check blood pressure here all the time if you want it done. And y'all probably do quite a bit of that.
First Thursday of every month.
First Thursday's blood pressure checking day. Okay. So that's a good way to do that, and to see what it's averaging certain times of the day. Sometimes your pressure's higher in the morning, sometimes it's higher later in the day. I'd say on average though, people tend to be a little higher in the morning, even before you wake up. And I always thought that was kind of weird. You get busy during the day and you're active and eating different things, but it seems like that's part of why people tend to have more heart attacks and strokes in the morning, because your pressure's higher and all these hormones that are trying to get you going in the morning make your pressure go up and make your vessels kind of more sticky. And so that's why, you know, if you hear people had a heart attack or stroke, a lot of times it tends to happen more in the early morning hours. So, yeah, checking it accurately, make sure you know what normal is. I mean, there's also, you know, too low of blood pressure. That's the thing. If it's, you want it kind of in that sweet spot. If it's too high, your risks go up. If it's too low, your risks start going up for bad things, heart attacks and strokes and falls and all that kind of thing. So I would say, you know, I don't really know what too low is. Some folks are on certain medicines that keep it low, and some folks don't drink enough fluids. Everybody I know that's older folks don't drink enough fluids, and you know, I can't stress that enough. And because my mom made it to 96, and we tried to shove her water in her face all the time to be drinking some. They just kind of lose that sense that they need to drink things. So getting dehydrated is really a big thing in keeping your pressure right too. Because if it's not drinking enough, a lot of times your medicines kind of, they work a little too much, and you take a fluid pill and you don't have enough fluids in you, and you can really bottom things out. So, but that's, you know, it is important. I mean, I think, you know, and I think the medicine you take, I mean, we can go into all the medicine. There's, I don't know how many blood pressure medicines. I could probably tell you about 100. I could, right off the top of my head, and all of them have certain interactions with other meds and have certain doses, and they change as you age too. Some drugs you might, I mean, I started on some when I was in my early 30s, and I probably don't want to be on those drugs anymore, you know, because things change with your kidneys and all that, and your brain, and you just don't want to, you know, you don't want to be on the same drug forever. But I think keeping that 130/80 number, that's probably good for most of us to look for that as your average blood pressure. So, and you know, just speaking to different kinds of medicines, I mean, there's probably 8 different classes of blood pressure medicines. And when I mean classes, I mean like fluid pills and things what we call like beta blockers and things like calcium channel blockers. So some people are on these older drugs. I mean, there's some that have been out 50 or 60 years. They still work well for people, and they tolerate them, and they're pretty cheap. I mean, the older drugs tend to be cheaper. But you know, the thing is, there's just not really a lot of new blood pressure medicine coming out, and it's kind of like that with a lot of other medicines too. I mean, antibiotics, there's hardly any new antibiotics coming out, which is a little scary. So we kind of have to rely on a lot of these older medicines and make sure they're in the right dose and given to the right people. So, but you know, I could tell you about what each class of drugs does, but I think it's important just to make sure you're taking them the way you're told to take it. And I can tell you I'm guilty of that too. I thought I was all cool one time, and I stopped taking my blood pressure medicine for a while, and it didn't work out too well. I mean, heart starts doing some crazy things, and you know, it's important to take them consistently so that I know, or your medical provider knows, you know, that you're taking it right, and so that's really important in controlling it. You know, we hear a lot about different foods and things that affect your blood pressure. Mostly it's like sodium or high salt foods. And so, you know, we just get way too much salt or sodium in our diet here in America. I mean, because it tastes good, I guess. And barbecue tastes good, and I like barbecue, but you really probably want to keep your salt or sodium level, about what's called, 2,000 milligrams a day, something like that. I mean, that's kind of moderate sodium diet. And if you look at labels, there's labels on your bottle there and your bottle there. Every bottle has how much sodium is in it. And, I mean, it blows my mind when I go to the grocery store and I look at labels and how much salt and sodium is in stuff. And just go try to buy a can of soup with less than 1,000 milligrams or half of your daily sodium intake. It's really hard to do that, and most people don't even think about it when they're buying stuff at the grocery store. Or you go out to a restaurant, you don't know how much salt is in something. I mean, I can sometimes tell after I've had something that's had a lot of salt in it, your mouth gets dry and all that stuff, or mine does. But it's something I have to really watch, and I think most people with high blood pressure have to watch it. But other things that it aggravates, obviously, is like heart failure and swelling in your ankles and all that. I mean, that's stuff you have to watch for salt or sodium too. But I just think if you have certain illnesses, high blood pressure being one of them, you kind of have to really pay attention to your diet. Just kind of like with diabetes, you don't want to go eating a bunch of sugar and that kind of thing. So, but why do we treat why is blood pressure so important? I think it's like I mentioned, it's a heart attack and stroke risk are kind of the big things. But I mean, you think of kidney failure too. I mean, what it does to your kidneys, probably behind diabetes, blood pressure is the biggest reason people are on dialysis, and that's a huge cost to, I don't know, what is it, 60, 80,000 a year that it costs to keep somebody on dialysis. So it's a really big cost factor for the country. But hopefully none of you are on dialysis, but you probably know somebody that is or has gone through that. And well, if you can prevent that's controlling your blood pressure is a good way to prevent going down that road with your kidneys. And kind of the same thing with your eyes. I mean, everybody gets eye exams, hopefully, and there's changes with your eyes also that really are coming from high blood pressure. Pressure's not in good control. I mean, that also is probably behind diabetes, is